Welcome back everyone to Formula 1 2021 and welcome to your race review for the 2021 Bahrain Grand Prix. And it's safe to say, all of the hype, all of the drama that was building up over the winter definitely didn't disappoint. What a race! What an incredible Grand Prix to start the season. Drama everywhere, up and down the field, from lights out twice to the checkered flag. Carnage everywhere, an awesome way to start the season. And if you thought I was hyped yesterday after qualifying, today a whole nother kettle of fish. We have a season on our hands, ladies and gents. We have a title fight for the first time in years. But of course today, our focus is the Bahrain Grand Prix. So as always, spoilers up ahead. Spoilers ahead. If you haven't seen the race, go and watch the race. It's an absolute cracker. But before we jump into our results, let's take a very quick look at your starting grid for yesterday's Grand Prix. And claiming his first pole position, the first pole position of the 2021 season, Max Verstappen and Red Bull led the charge with the two Mercedes of Hamilton and Bottas in behind. Also on row 2 was Charles Leclerc. Gasly and Ricciardo followed, out qualifying his new teammate Lando Norris in P7, but it was the old chums with Norris and Sainz on row 4. Alonso and Stroll rounded out your top 10. A difficult qualifying on debut for Red Bull saw Sergio Perez start P11 with Antonio Giovinazzi P12. Row 7 included the youngest driver in Japanese rookie Yuki Tsunoda, partnered with the oldest driver in veteran Kimi Raikkonen. The Williams of Russell was 16th, with the Alpine of Ocon having a difficult day on Saturday, out in Q1 in P16. Latifi and Schumacher 17th and 18th, Nikita Mazepin 19th, and Sebastian Vettel, after picking up a penalty in qualifying for ignoring double wave yellows, started dead last in P20. And just as an extra side note, we had two formation laps, with Sergio Perez breaking down on the initial one, having to start from the pit lane for our eventual start one lap later, meaning our race was cut down to 56 laps. But what a 56 laps they were. Spoiler warning out of the way, here is your result for the first race of the season for the Bahrain Grand Prix. And continuing his winning streak, his record of winning a Grand Prix in every season he's competed in, Sir Lewis Hamilton claimed the first victory of the 2021 season. Verstappen fought him all the way to the end, but couldn't quite. Well, I say couldn't quite, we'll talk about that in a moment's time, but couldn't quite beat the 7-time world champion. But from what we saw today, I think we're going to see more opportunities to see those two in particular going wheel to wheel all season long. Valtteri Bottas made it a very familiar podium, but nonetheless, the route in which we got there, so special to start off this year. Lando Norris, P4, a great drive from McLaren today, with Sergio Perez qualified 11th, started in the pit lane, 5th at the checkered flag, a great drive and the official driver of the day for the first race of the year. Charles Leclerc 6th, with Daniel Ricciardo P7 on debut for McLaren, debut for Sainz at Ferrari P8, but rookie Yuki Tsunoda stamping, marking his first race in Formula 1 with a vengeance. P9 points on debut, a spectacular drive. Definitely going to talk about that young man a little bit later on. And Lance Stroll, your final points finisher, a difficult day for Aston, P10. Just missing out on points for the first race of the season. Incredible drives though from Kimi Raikkonen and Antonio Giovinazzi, the two Alfa Romeos, so close. That car is a million times better than what they had last season. I'm confident they're going to be scoring points this year. I didn't think that a few weeks ago. Ocon in the wars today, P13 at the checkered flag, with Williams of George Russell just one place behind. A very difficult day for Sebastian Vettel, saw him finish 15th only in front of German rookie Mick Schumacher in 16th. Gasly, Latifi, Fernando Alonso and Nikita Mazepin all failed to finish the first race of the season. And with your result out of the way, shall we move over then to our race reports, our race rundown. Yes, it's 12 months on, and I still don't know what I'm calling it, but we will go with race rundown for today's first race of 2021. And if you are new round here and you don't really know what this section is, this is where we take a look at each team's performance. Sometimes we start at the back and work our way forward, but today we can make an exception. We have to start at the front. We have to. It's a no-brainer. An incredible race. up and down the field. But what we have been screaming for years in Formula 1 is a real fight at the front of the field, and we were treated to exactly that today. Two very different strategies from Mercedes and Red Bull, with Hamilton coming in very, very early onto the hard tyres, then doing another set on the hard tyres, whereas Red Bull, who had kept a couple of medium sets for the race, trying something a little bit different, and that kind of cat and mouse strategy game that you all know I love so much was so intriguing for the entire race, not knowing who had the advantage. It was all going to come down to the wire, and that's exactly what happened. And while Sergio Perez was fighting his way back up through the field, there was a stage where it was kind of a 2 versus 1. Verstappen holding his own with Hamilton trying a risky strategy, and at one stage Bottas trying something different. But it all came apart for Valtteri, who had a really difficult first stint, about 7 or 8 seconds behind the lead 2, clawed it back in the second stint, and then calamity, again for Valtteri Bottas, with a pit stop in Bahrain. 10.9 seconds he was stationary for, with a stop that I think a lot of us expected to not happen for a very long time. Mercedes came on the radio, and maybe this was a little bit of mind games with Red Bull, saying, Valtteri, we're going long, which I think many of us took to meaning we're doing a 2-stop. We're going to go completely opposite to Lewis, opposite to Max, try and box in Red Bull's strategy. Nope, they just came in a couple of laps later. And again, I do think that could have been the mind games coming in. It was very suspicious that they broadcast that on full TV, worldwide TV. But nevertheless, Valtteri came in. I was surprised that they copied the same strategy as Lewis Hamilton. That's something that they've been very clear on in the past, that they're not going to give one driver preferential treatment on strategy. But I did think, with this season being a year where they don't feel they have the best car, which I would be inclined to agree with after this weekend, I thought they would really try, secure the victory and secure third place. Of course they did end up getting that, we'll get onto that in a moment's time, but after that calamitous pit stop, which I didn't think was necessary, Valtteri out of the running, in a race where I don't think he would have won, but I think certainly would have been putting pressure on Max in those final stages and would have caused a few more headaches, maybe even a mistake from Max, because ultimately what did end up happening was Max was the one being the hunter, with Lewis Hamilton being the hunted. At one stage, Max kind of forcing Hamilton into an error. I'm interested to see what you guys think on that. Hamilton going wide on the exit of turn 10, a tricky corner anyway, on old hard tyres. But what's more important about that scenario is he was under pressure. Max was applying it hard, charging up behind the Mercedes. Eventually made the move up at turn 3, which I think is the right place to make the move. The second DRS zone in that first sector. He's then got the whole rest of the lap to gap Hamilton. So right place, right time for Max Verstappen. Didn't want to get stuck behind too long and get in the dirty air. Brilliant stuff. Goes around the outside of turn 3. Gets the move done, but carries a bit too much speed over the white line, out of the track bounds, which I'm sure there's going to be a hot topic of debate in the comments about this. Passes Hamilton, supposedly takes the lead. Only a couple of corners later, Red Bull say, let Lewis back through. You shouldn't have passed him off the track. So many questions about this one, and I think this is a wider issue Formula 1's had for a few years, is indeed track limits, because it was made very clear early on that you are allowed to go outside of the circuit. You're allowed to use that part of the circuit, but you cannot gain an advantage. And that's why you saw so many drivers in the race using that part of the track. Not all of them did, but Hamilton in particular was one driver that decided to go a little bit wider there than other drivers. I'm not a big fan of that anyway. I am more of a traditionalist in the sense that I think when you've got a race circuit, very much like on the F1 games with strict corner cutting, just use the white lines. That's what they're there for. Otherwise, you get these silly incidents like today where there's those little question marks that you kind of feel slightly robbed of a real race there because there are those question marks. But I think Lando Norris put it best. When he was fighting Charles Leclerc, both of them side by side, Charles pushes him out a little bit wide and Lando very easily could have gone straight on. Could have stayed off the track, gained an advantage and gone side by side with Charles over the next few corners. But he said he was told no gaining an advantage off the track. That's why he backed out of that move. Max didn't. and that's why he had to let Lewis back through. And sadly for Max, it was too little too late at that point. Made a little mistake at the top of the hill in the final sector and could never quite get close enough to make another move. But the tension throughout that fight at the front for the whole race long, we have not seen for a very, very long time. And one thing that was for sure, from the pace of the front two, but also Bottas, who picked up the fastest lap, Sergio Perez, who had an incredible fight through the field, making overtakes left, right and centre, was Checo today. A great debut for the Red Bull team. We've got a fight on our hands, and that's exactly what we wanted to see. Let's talk about some other people, because we've been here for 10 minutes and I've only talked about the battle at the front, and as you all know, I want to try my best to cover every single team, every single driver, but we couldn't not talk about the front. A fantastic start to 2021. But the fight in the midfield, if we thought it was good last year, I think it's going to be even better this year. And whilst I'm pretty confident we're not going to see as many midfield podiums this year, which will be a shame, we're kind of replacing that with a championship fight. So I'm okay with that. And I do think we'll see a sprinkling of 1 or 2 podiums from the midfield this year. But the battle itself, so many different cars in contention for third this year. And after a really disappointing Saturday with McLaren starting 6th and 7th with Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris, Lando in particular had a really awesome race yesterday. Not only did he finish P4, comfortably P4, only 9 seconds off Valtteri Bottas at the checkered flag, he was nice and racy. He was very much guns blazing, elbows out, you're not coming through kind of mentality, which I loved from Lando Norris yesterday. Battling side by side with new teammate Daniel Ricciardo. That's hard enough anyway, battling Danny Rick, yet alone when he's your teammate. Hats off Lando Norris for pulling that off. Had another great battle with Charles Leclerc on the restart as well after the initial safety car. Had a little bit of a ding-dong with Valtteri Bottas. A great way to start his season. We've also got Danny Rick. And whilst P7 isn't fantastic and he will know eventually later on in the year, once he's up to speed, he will want better results than that. Overall, a solid debut for his first race in orange. We've also got, in that kind of front of the midfield fight, Ferrari. And I think, along with Alfa Romeo, were my big surprises of yesterday's Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc qualified P4 on a pretty awful strategy, in all fairness, starting on the soft tyres, moving on to the mediums. That didn't quite work as well on that Ferrari. And I think that could be a pattern we see throughout this year. Might just be circuit specific. Soft tyres look good. Anything else, not so good. And we saw kind of variations of that on different cars, with the Williams in particular going quite well on the mediums, but soft tyres, yeah, not really their forte. But just like Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc, nice and racy off the start, especially on that safety car restart, which I think Max Verstappen did mess up a little bit, going so late on. That was a little bit of a wincing moment, with all those cars just came steaming in, slowing down. Very similar flashbacks to Mugello I had for a moment there. But when they did get going, Hamilton right on the back of Max with Charles Leclerc steaming down. And that image, I don't think I'll be able to find it because I've not seen it anywhere on the team's media sites. But where we had a Mercedes, a Red Bull and a Ferrari all side by side fighting into turn 1. That's what we want to see this season. But a great drive from Charles Leclerc, unlucky to be passed by Sergio Perez. I believe had a really good fight with Sergio Perez with a few laps to go, but we didn't get to see it because the TV cameras, as usual, focused on the front and not enough on that midfield. So a great drive from Leclerc, and similar feelings to what I have with Danny Rick. Carlos Sainz, a really solid debut. A difficult opening lap, fought his way back through the field, solid points for his first race for the Tifosi. Someone who did have a great race today, but a mixed fortunes, I think is fair enough to say, for the team, is AlphaTauri, and in particular, Yuki Tsunoda. An incredible debut, starting P12, had to be nice and punchy, and boy, was that man aggressive today, flying down the inside of any driver. He didn't care who it was, but an audacious dive bomb on Fernando Alonso, of all people, just kind of put into picture how good this man is and what a potential superstar he could be in Formula 1. Long way to go And actually, Pierre Gasly was very much in a position to score big points this weekend, but contact with Daniel Ricciardo after that safety car restart put pay to any points. He'll be back though, and one thing that is for sure is that car looks quick in 2021. A car that doesn't look so quick, which I'm surprised to say, Aston Martin. 1 point today, but just a real mixed bag. Not a bad race from Lance Stroll, just like many of the drivers today, had to get his elbows out, had to be racy. That midfield, especially that group, with Leclerc, Ricciardo, Sainz, Tsunoda, Stroll, Alonso, Ocon, they just seem to be fighting all race long. Lovely. That's what we want to see. But that Aston always seemed to be the one going backwards. And Stroll coming away with a point is okay. But Sebastian Vettel, a weekend to forget, a debut to forget for his brand new team, picking up 3 penalty points on Saturday for ignoring double yellow flags. Started the race well, managed to overtake a couple of the Haas cars, Yuki Tsunoda, a couple of the Alfa Romeos, in all that melee on the opening lap. Fair enough, good job Sebastian. Started to work his way forward, and it kind of looked like for a moment anyway, especially when they were trying a very unique and audacious one-stop at one stage, it looked like we kind of had the old Sebastian back. And then contact with Esteban Ocon steaming into the back of him with a lockup, very reminiscent of the 2019 British Grand Prix when he steamed into the back of Max Verstappen. He came on the radio saying it was Ocon's fault. No way in a million years was that Esteban Ocon's fault. Esteban stayed left, took the corner, and Seb went into the back of him. 10-second penalty, 2 more penalty points on his licence, which means the total for this weekend is 5. He also had none coming into this season, so it is what it is. A disappointing weekend is exactly what it is for his first race with Aston. But I just feel they're not going to be a team that consistently scores points this year. With the McLaren, the AlphaTauri, the Ferrari, and even Alpine, that we might as well talk about now, all looking better cars. And whilst Ocon was fighting his way back through the field and had an okay race, like many, was having to be nice and aggressive in that midfield fight, but contact with Sebastian Vettel put pay to any point on his first race of the year. But someone who I was megally impressed with, Fernando Alonso. He hasn't lost it and came right back into Formula 1, pretty much where he left off. Fighting in that midfield, was up to, I believe, 7th place at one stage in the race. Had a brilliant battle with Sebastian Vettel and Carlos Sainz. Really couldn't have asked a lot more from him. And retiring from the race, not only with rear brake failure, but due to a sandwich bag. That's just typical Alonso bad luck. on his return, you got to feel for him, because the performance he did put on for half the race distance that he completed was so good. And that Alpine car didn't look all that bad. Alfa Romeo, 11th and 12th. I kind of skipped over them, but I mentioned it earlier. Just a really solid race weekend. My biggest surprise of the weekend, indeed, was Alfa Romeo. Where they were last year, in those back 3 teams, to move from that far behind to now be on the cusp of points, on merit no less, is just incredible. And when you look at Williams this weekend, they couldn't really ask for a lot more. This isn't a circuit that they went into this weekend thinking it was going to suit their car. They didn't expect points. Solid running from Russell. Latifi retired late on. And when you look at Haas, Mick Schumacher had a spin, a quiet race, but what was most important for both of their drivers was finishing the race. And as evident by Schumacher, he's now done his first race start. He's now done his first pit stop, his first safety car, his first virtual safety car. And in a season where they've got the worst car, they're not going to be scoring points. All of those things are going to be so crucial. So spinning twice in qualifying, spinning on lap 1, hitting the wall, not ideal for Nikita Mazepin. Must do better next time out at Imola, because certainly this weekend was a weekend to forget. And that about concludes the majority of your stories on today's grid. A little bit longer than normal, but when it's a world-class race, it's got to be done. You've got to talk about a championship fight, and as we move over to our driver standings, that's exactly what we've got in 2021. No surprise, your driver standings is the race results. So Lewis Hamilton is top with Verstappen P2, Valtteri Bottas P3, and it's the only real change to your results. 16 points instead of 15 because he got the fastest lap in the Grand Prix. Norris, Perez, Leclerc 4th, 5th and 6th. Ricciardo, Sainz, Tsunoda and Stroll, your final points finishers for today's Grand Prix. And then your bottom half, all yet to score: Raikkonen, Giovinazzi, Ocon, Russell, Sebastian Vettel, Schumacher in 16th place, Gasly, Latifi, Fernando Alonso and Nikita Mazepin, your field. And in the Constructors, this one perhaps is a little bit more interesting. After the first race of the season, Mercedes take quite a comfortable lead, 41 over Red Bull's 28, with McLaren just 10 behind on 18 points. Ferrari are 4th, AlphaTauri 5th, Aston Martin the only other team to score in 6th, Alfa Romeo in front of Alpine, Williams are not last. Finally, fantastic news for the British team, and Haas, at the moment on no points, are last in the standings. And as always this season, if you want to keep up to date with more Formula 2, Inside F2, the brand new YouTube channel, is available to view in the description down below. And with that all out of the way, we can finally move on to our final two aspects of this weekend's race review: driver of the day and race rating. Yesterday, I gave my driver of the day to Max Verstappen. However, come Sunday, I have gone with Lando Norris. Perez had a great race, but I think Lando, in a car that isn't as good as those front two teams, dominant in that midfield, utterly dominant in that midfield today, made so many great overtakes, so many great battles, and just edges it for me. But my first racing reviews driver of the weekend is Max Verstappen. This one was so difficult to choose from. Driver of the day was one of the hardest for a while, but an incredible performance in qualifying for Max, partnered with a, I think, worse strategy than the Mercedes, coming out and getting so close to victory. A hard one to take, but I think really sets up the season nicely for an incredible year of racing. 9 out of 10, my race rating. I was playing with an 8, but having slept on it, I loved that race yesterday. That has filled me up with so much hype for this season. I cannot wait for Imola. And that is it from me here in Bahrain for your first race review of the 2021 season. It's been a long one, that's for sure, so if you are new, feel free to subscribe to keep up to date with all Formula 1 2021 news, reviews, all that good stuff. Thank you all very much for watching, guys, and I hope to see you all in the next one.